Hello and welcome to Magical Conversations Season 2. I kind of want to talk about my intentions with the podcast and why I'm starting this new season. When I started this podcast, I started with the intention of wanting to share my story and sharing the tools that I've done to cope with my experiences. But when I began this podcast, I don't think I was ready to be fully vulnerable and fully authentic and to share my story with the most truth that I was able to. I think I was still dealing with a lot of shame, a lot of humiliation uh, in my story and what I have been through. And don't get me wrong, I'm still very ashamed. I'm still incredibly humiliated. And me doing this, I still have all of those feelings, but I want to come here and share my story either way. I think I reached a point of comfortability with myself to, even though what I'm going to share is shameful to me, it's humiliating to me, but at the end of the day, it is my story and it is my truth. And I'm going to try to be as vulnerable and as raw and truthful as I possibly can, even if it brings me shame, even if it brings me a sense of guilt, and even if it's uncomfortable for me to say it, because at the end of the day, I wanted to create this space with magical conversations and also with Laurinda Landia, where I was the most authentic version of myself, because I've been moving through life wearing a mask of trying to be something. I won't say that I'm not, but trying to show the world this diluted version of myself and trying to show the world like the most positive outlook that I can about me and my life, and not sharing like the dark experiences, the difficult experiences that I have dealt with and what ultimately made me me. And at the end of the day, I'm very proud of who I am. I like the person that I am, even though it comes with a dark, shameful story. But it is who I am. So I want to use this season to express myself authentically as much as I can, tell my story, and also say the techniques that I've used to cope and heal with my experiences. Because I think season 2 of the podcast was very only sharing the tools that I've used to heal and overcome difficult experiences, but I was not sharing the difficult experiences because I was not yet ready uh, to share my truth. And I think now I'm ready because I reached a point of self acceptance and self comfortability. And this episode, I want to talk about the journey of being alone and why I think this journey of being alone gave me more courage uh, to be more authentic. And I want to share my story of my relationship with myself, because for a long time I was unable to be alone, and I had a lot of difficulties in sitting with myself, sitting with my mind, sitting with my thoughts, and face my emotions. And this has been a long journey that it took a lot of rock bottoms to be here and to be okay and comfortable in being alone. And for me to explain it, I kind of want to go back to the beginning, to my childhood, because my childhood is like, it made me who I am today. It created the person that I am today. And it's not a happy story. It gets very dark sometimes. So, also a bit of trigger warning. Today, I'm going to talk about narcissism, um substance abuse, alcohol abuse as well, and all sorts of escapisms. And also, I'm going to talk about the feeling of loneliness and the journey of learning how to be alone. So, going back in time, when it all comes back to childhood, right? I was born in a narcissistic household. So, what do I mean by this is my parents were both narcissists. And of course, at the time, I did not know what that was. It took me years of separation and years of healing to understand what happened to me and to understand what narcissism is. Actually, narcissism is a concept that I only gained like this past year. And it was really through this journey of being alone that I understood the psychology behind narcissism, that I understood what happened to me and why I was feeling the way that I was feeling. So basically, I grew up with two narcissistic parents, and what they do best and how they function is that they view you as an object. You are not a person in the sense that you don't have free will, you don't have wants, you don't have needs, you don't have desires. You are an object for their insecurities and for their ego. So basically, I grew up in a house that I was constantly diminished, criticized, mocked. I was made to feel like I was the worst human being to be alive. I was made to feel like I was the most unlovable, disgusting, bad, horrible person to be alive, quite honestly. I was made to feel as a burden. And as a child, of course, like I believed it because that's all I know. I am a kid. I have no cognitive capacity to understand complex concepts, right? So I grew up in a house that everything I did was wrong. Every move that I took was criticized. Everything that I did, I was made to feel like the worst human being possible. And I think as a kid, imagine as a kid, I was very shy and I had a lot of social anxiety, and I still am until this day. I think I just learned to create this mask of charisma, being an extrovert as a way to protect myself. Because, like, if you see me now, for example, if you interacted with me, I usually get this perception that I am very charismatic and I'm very sociable and I'm very extroverted. But this is really a mask that I learned to take to kind of, it feels like to keep people entertained so they don't see my real me, because I feel still this day a big sense of shame and a big sense of, yeah, humiliation and a big sense of guilt of being myself. And I feel like there is no space to be myself. I feel like my needs will never be met. I feel like I'm not worthy of wants or desires or boundary of respect. So I usually create this mask of charismatic, extroverted, sociable, as really as a way to kind of smoke and mirrors, because I'm not yet comfortable and safe enough to show myself authentically to people. That's why I also wanted to do that with my podcast and also with Laurinda on YouTube, as a space for me to slowly tap into the most authentic version of me, to slowly demask myself and to create a life, slowly create a life of authenticity and of truth that is aligned with who I am at my core. So, as a child, I was very shy and incredibly socially anxious, because imagine, at the time, of course, through logic, I did not understand what was happening to me. So, I thought that people, I saw people as danger. I saw people as threats because it was taught to me from my parents. It was taught to me that interacting with people meant to be diminished, criticized, that everything I did was wrong. I felt like a little hurricane of chaos. Like every time that I passed a place, like I'll create like such big chaos in people's life, and I was such a bad person for just existing. So I was extremely antisocial. I remember being a kid and being like in the first year of school, and I like could not speak with people. Like people come to me, and I was just like freeze. I didn't know how to interact. I was afraid to interact. I didn't trust nobody. I saw people as threats, and I was just trying to move through life as quiet as possible. I was trying to be as little as I could be and to take as the least amount of space as I could to kind of protect myself from bashing, to kind of protect my, yeah, almost my sanity and my emotions. So I was extremely shy, and I did make friends. I don't consider them friends now. I was close to people that also put me down because I thought that is what love looked like. Because in my house, right, uh, that was what was taught to me. I thought love was about people constantly criticizing me, make me feel like guilty for just existing, making fun of me, mocking me. So the only people that I had close to me outside of my family house, outside of my family environment, because also narcissism is like generational trauma. So most of my family is like this. And the only people I almost felt comfortable with was the people that were mimicking the same behavior, because I thought that was the norm. I simply thought that life was that way. So I was extremely shy, right? And I knew that I was in pain, but I thought that there was something wrong with me. And that's the reason why I was in pain. I was blaming myself for the pain that I was experiencing. I thought, okay, like I'm in a lot of emotional pain. Okay, as a kid, I don't have quite like this thought through perspective, but I kind of knew in my body that I was suffering, but I had no idea why. I didn't understood why. I thought that was life, and I thought that something was inherently wrong with me. And of course, like as I grew up, things become harder because the trauma just accumulates. My family continues and it just escalates their behavior towards me. So the trauma accumulates more, and also the more I grew up, of course, I gain more cognitive function. So it's not that I understood, but like my emotional intelligence was upgrading, right? So I would feel more intense and complex emotions that I did not know how to deal with, that I did not know how to fix, because I get, again, I feel like I am the most, the worst person to be alive. I feel like I'm the most unworthy, unlovable person to has ever existed, and I'm blaming it all on myself. So the more I grew up, and I think it was about like 13 or 14, I came to this realization that I was in a lot of pain and I was reaching a breaking point. And I remember thinking to myself at like 13 or 14, like, I'm going to do everything I can to escape this place. And at the time, I was not thinking I'm going to escape this place because I'm suffering for it. At the time, I felt like I was such a burden for my parents. I was such like a menace almost for them. I was creating so much chaos because, right, everything is my fault. Everything I do is wrong. Like they blame me for everything in their life, their finances, their mental well-being, their physical health. Everything was my life, was my fault, right? So at the time, I remember thinking, like 13 or 14, like, I'm gonna do everything I can to get out of this house for the love of my parents, in the sense that I looked at myself as such a burden and I felt almost bad for my parents because I was like, oh, damn, like they have a awful life because of me. They have this horrible life and their life is so bad and so hard because I exist. So in an act of love for them, I'm going to do everything I can to escape this house, to leave this house, right? However, I'm a minor. I can't get a job. I can't financially sustain myself because, yes, this is another thing. I grew up with not many resources. And I think there is also a degree here that money in my household was weaponized as a way of control. Imagine, I, we were not rich by any means. I'll say like we were uh, low middle class, but I think my parents made me feel like we were poorer than we actually were because it was a way to weaponize money as a form of control. Basically, if I wanted to do something or if I wanted to have a need met, they will tell me, we cannot because we don't have money, right? And that will shut me up. Like, I would understand that because I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Like, you don't have the money, so you cannot buy me this or that. And I remembered that I was like wearing these shoes. These like where I grew up was in Portugal, and they had like these fairs, like this kind of market. They are usually illegal, to be quite honest, where they would like you could buy clothes and shoes and all type of stuff in a very like cheap price. So I had these like knockoffs of Timberlands. I remember this until this day. And they were like the only shoes I had. They were kinda in a they were not even in good condition at that point. Like they were okay, they were wearable. I could like walk in them, right? And I remember like having only those pairs of shoes, and like I had holes in my shoes, like my shoes were falling apart, and I was gluing them and I was putting tape in them. Because I mean, in my mind, like we are poor, right? We don't have money to buy new shoes. However, of course, now I look back, maybe, yes, probably we did have money to buy new shoes, but it was the thing that my needs are a burden and my needs are making their life miserable. So I cannot have any of my needs met, right? And I even remember, for example, when you go to school, like you have to pay for your lunch. And I imagine at some point for me to be able to save some money to buy like extra things for myself, like things that I needed, maybe like a new pair of shoes or something else, something that I wanted. What I will do is my parents will give me like the exact money for food, and I would basically imagine they will give me €5 for a full meal, and I will spend only like €1 in alpha soup. So I'll eat like 3 spoons of soup for lunch so I can start like gathering and saving money to buy other things that I need. So in a lot of ways, I went through a lot of money insecurity and at some points food insecurity because I was like eating less. Basically, I was just eating to make sure that my body will not fail so I can buy other stuff for myself. And this other stuff for myself is at some point substances. I'm not proud of this. This is a part of my story that I'm ashamed, but it is a part of me and is a part of who I am. Because imagine, right, I reach a point that I'm making a plan to escape. And my plan to escape at this moment, because I have no resources, I'm trying to save money, but it's barely. I have no support. And I know that. I know that my escape plan was made to be done alone. I had no one to ask for help. Because imagine, not only is my family, like most of them, narcissists, the way that my parents would let me interact with people, now looking back, I can understand it more, but at the time I didn't, would be like if there were people that they could control, I could interact with them. And usually these people that they could control will also be narcissists. Again, I think narcissism is love. So the friendships that I have, the connections that I have, is all the same sphere. They're all treating me the same. So I naturally gravitate towards them, but also there is a degree here of control in the sense that if, for example, I made a friendship with someone that they couldn't control, I remember this specific time that I started being friends with this girl from Brazil, and their parents were doctors, and I wanted to hang out with them. My mother, because I think now looking back, it was like a group of people that she could not control. What she will do was like instill like these crazy amounts of fear in me, in the sense that she will tell me like, if you go to their house or if you play with their kids, like your life is going to be in danger. I'm trying to like find a word that is like YouTube friendly for what she told me. Let me see. She basically told me that they were going to sell my body for organs. There is a specific word for this, but I'm trying to comply to YouTube guidelines. But she basically told me that they were going to, in graphic detail, by the way, open my body, take out my organs and sell them. And this was a tactic that they used that was in situations and environments that they could not control. They will instill like so much fear in me. And because I know nothing else, I believe them, right? So actually, like when she told me that, I kind of distanced myself from them because I was scared that my life was going to be in danger. And also in terms of independence, they always painted like this narrative that is extremely hard to be independent, like financially, and extremely hard to live alone. And I mean, they're not lying to a certain degree. Like, this was Portugal, and the economy of Portugal is not easy. You gain very little for doing a lot of work. And it's very hard to be financially independent, extremely hard to live on your own. Yes, that's true. But I mean, it's not impossible. Of course, you don't live a good life. Of course, like you have to budget and be super cheap to be able to live. But it's still a possibility, right? But the way that they painted the world to be was like this horrible, super difficult place to survive. And again, I believe them. But at some point, my desperation like desperation at some point overrides fear. Even though I was fearful, I was such in a bad place. I was so incredibly desperate that I was willing to go through almost anything. And I did. But I was willing to go through terrible experiences if that meant getting out of that place. But again, like I'm still a child. I'm a teenager now. I'm 13, 14 years old, having this realization. So what I do is my escape plan was to study really hard in school, do really well in school. So maybe I could get like a decent job that maybe I'll be able to live independently and get my own place, get my own rent a room with roommates, all of that. I was not achieving like for this I life. I was just trying to live with a bare minimum. I could even be like a mattress on the floor and I'll be okay with that. So I was always focused in school. Studies were a big priority of mine because that was a part of my escape plan. And also, I'm not sharing this escape plan to anyone. I'm not telling them this is what I'm going to do because one, I knew I was going to be unsupportive. And to some degree, I didn't quite understand it logically at the time. I did not have the full realization at the time. But at some degree, I knew if they knew it was going to be harder for me to achieve it because they will create obstacles, more obstacles than what I already have in the way. And until this day, I live by this mentality. I say, no one, what are my next steps? I work in darkness. Nobody knows what I'm doing. And that's what I'm comfortable with. Like I say, no one what I'm going to do next. I simply do it. I don't show it to people because that's the mentality that I gain through living in that environment. So I had this all plan in my mind, right? Okay, I'm going to study really hard. I'm going to get a half decent job to live a half decent life. But again, I'm still a child, so I cannot leave the house. And at this point, I cannot be there in the sense that my mental is really breaking here. I'm reaching a point of mental breakdown. Some really dark thoughts came through my mind. I really reached there some points where I even considered not to be alive as a way to escape what I was living. My second best option for this at the time was gardening, if you know what I mean. I'm not talking about literally literal gardening. I'm talking about gardening. Yeah. I'm trying to convey YouTube guidelines, but gardening. So I start gardening and at 15 I start like gardening. I think it started like weekly, but I also start drinking alcohol because I had to stay in that house, but I could not be fully sober in it. Like my mind was really reaching a dark place that I did not know how much I could take. At some point, I needed to escape. I needed a sort of escapism because I cannot be fully conscious in this. Like, I cannot be fully sober. I need to be numb. And gardening and drinking alcohol and all of that. And now I feel like a great sense of shame. Even then, I felt a great sense of shame. But at the time where I look at it, it was my only way to cope. In a lot of ways, I see drinking alcohol and gardening as a way, almost a best friend, because it was the only thing that supported me in a weird way. It was the only thing that reduced the experience that I was living. It was the only way that I found to kind of cope with what I was going through. So I start like partying at 15. I started gardening. And even I reached a point that I went like 7 years, if I'm not mistaken, where I was not sober one day. I went 7 years that I even forgot what was like to be sober. I completely forgot what was like to be fully in my thoughts, to be fully in my body, to be fully in my experience. Not only I'm using alcohol and substances, I'm using people. I was never a relationship girly, like a romantic relationship girly. Never. Like I never had a serious romantic relationship until this day. And honestly, I feel good about it. I don't have any shame or any prejudice about that. I was always more focused on friendships because, like, for me, friendships until this day, like, are so precious to me because I feel like friendships are almost so pure because you're just hanging out because you like to hang out. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't have like the pressures of romantic relationships in the sense that I think a lot of romantic relationships and people wanting to be in a romantic relationship, I think sometimes is to define their worth almost. Like, I think there is this almost pressure from the ego where it's not just about because we like being around each other. I feel like it's almost about because I need to have a relationship. So I always was more of a friendship based. And friendship, I say it very lightly because at this time, again, I don't have friends. I have people that I hang out with, and these people treat me horribly. These people are treating me the same as my parents. These people are treating me the same as my family. Again, because I see this as normal and I see this as like the norm and the status quo. And I think, okay, this is what love is meant to look like and is meant to feel. But also because I could not be alone at all. Like, I needed to escape my mind at all times. And people were a distraction from my mind. So I'm using people as a way to distract myself from my mind and my reality as a way of escapism. And imagine, it could be any person. I don't care about your personality. I don't care even if you like me. If you are down to hang out with me and if you are down to have a conversation with me so I can escape the reality that I'm living, fine. At that time, of course. So I start going to this phase that is like extremely sociable. So imagine I do have a big group of friends. I start like gaining a big group of friends. We party, we do all the things. And imagine I was not happy in these friendships. I was not myself. I was not being myself. And I was really just being with these people as a way to escape. And I enter like my party girl era. That I mean, I look back, yes, it was fun. Was I doing it for the right reasons? No. I was doing it to escape. Like, imagine I go to college, I go to university in my bachelor's in my hometown because imagine, again, I don't have resources. So I cannot go to a different city. I wish, whew, what will I give and to go to a different city? But at the time, I did not have resources. I even had to take like a bachelor that I was not that interested in because it was the best option that I had in my city. It was a bachelor in languages and business relations. I mean, it was cool. It was nice. It's not what I'm passionate about, but it is what I had at the time, right? And it was like the best like bachelor's that I could take at the time in the field that I was at. So I enter college and again studying super hard, but also partying super hard. At some point, I gained this reputation of really being a party girl. I would imagine I will go out at least 2 times a week and I will smoke and I will garden and drink to the point of oblivion. Like my goal when I was going out is to get as wasted as I possibly could, is to get as numb as I possibly could. I reached a point that, imagine, before going out, like, again, I don't have much money, so I have to kind of pre-drink before I go out. At some point, my pre-drinks were 2 bottles of red wine, me alone drinking 2 bottles of red wine. And at some point, I gained so much tolerance to alcohol that 2 bottles of red wine did not make me drunk. So imagine, I'm partying. Even if I party during the week with classes the next day, I go out, I get super wasted, I sleep an hour, and I go to classes like at 9 a.m. with my party clothes. And again, also at the time, this is like a whole nother subject to a whole other episode. I was, I was dressing very provocatively. And what I mean by this is, like, at the time, I would like to dress. I don't think it's like very scandalous, but I guess to the society that I was at and to the culture I was at, it was very provocative. I also always had like a body that was considered attractive. And like I will wear like a lot of cleavage, like mini skirts. Nothing wrong with that, but I think in the culture and the society that I was at, it was viewed like a bit, yeah, it was poorly viewed. It's like, oh my god, she's wearing that, like, damn, look at her, like it was poorly viewed. So imagine, I am going out the next day, I go to class with the same makeup, same clothes, did not change at all, because I'll sleep like in friends' houses, because I lived not a lot of, like, not in a big distance from my university, but I kind of needed to be in friends' house just for me to be able, like, to be there in class, and so I will not need to walk home like late at night, because this, like, at the times, no Ubers. Again, I don't have money, so no taxis, none of that. So if I wanted to go out, I needed to sleep in a friend's house that was closer to the center of the city, because otherwise I'll need to like walk 30 minutes, 40 minutes alone in the dark to my house at like 5, 6 a.m., So I was living this life of always like being around people, always partying, also like studying really hard. Really gained a reputation for like being the party girl, but also being the one that studied really hard. I had average good grades. I was not like the best in the class, but it was like average good. Um, and at the time, I think also what kept me running was living in the survival state, because I could not do that now, because I'm still living in survival, but I'm not living in half of the state of survival, adrenaline, and anxiety that I was. I think I could keep going because I was always in this state of survival. And it reached the point that I'm always with quote unquote friends. Most people were bad. Some people there were decent people that I still talk to until this day. There were some good ones, because imagine what I'm doing is I'm hanging out with a person that I call my friend at the time. At some point, they really like start to like really treat me badly, to a point, okay, like, I cannot take this anymore, I need to like get out, right? And I will jump from like group of friends to group of friends. uh Basically, it was just like for me to distract myself, for me to keep my mind busy, for me to escape. I also did use studying as a form of escape. Like, I studied a lot because it was a way to not be in my mind. It was a way to not think. It was a way to not process, because I couldn't. And there was like this opportunity to go on Erasmus, that is basically you spend a semester in a different country. And this it goes again with a thing of weaponizing money, uh, the way that my parents weaponize money, because supposedly I'm so poor that I cannot buy shoes, but I am not, not poor enough that I can go to another country to do a semester, which, hey, grateful for it. Thank you. Thank you for that. But there was also like this thing about my parents that they saw traveling, and I'm very grateful that they saw that way because that allowed me to have it. They saw traveling as this very good thing because they always wanted to travel, but they never had the means to do it. And I think with narcissistic parents, they really see you as an extension of themselves. So they kind of want you to do the things that they wanted to do but never could. And so traveling was okay to a certain degree. Of course, he was not traveling with a group of friends. He was like traveling through educational purpose. Because again, also education was a big thing in my household. Because it was a story like of my father that he always wanted to go to college, but like his father, quote unquote, forbade them. He never could. And he was always very angry about that because according to him, he was like a taxi driver and he was poor and he had a miserable life because his father forbade him to go to college, so he could never have a decent job to gain a decent amount of money to live a more, I guess, abundant life. So we would blame his current life that he was living in that, because of that, because he never went to college, he never went to university. So that was kind of the things that they allowed and they were okay with. Again, very grateful. And I'm going to Poland, that at the time is like a cheaper country than Portugal. So it's doable. I can do it. Again, I'm not living rich high life, but it's possible for me to do it. So I had this opportunity to go on my last semester of my bachelor's to Poland to do my semester there. And again, party girl era. I had the best time of my life. It was also the first time that I was out of my house, that was out of my family environment. And I felt free for the first time. Like I felt so light. Until this day, I look back at that time with so much fondness. I usually say that L is my version of L is my childhood home, and my version of Evan was the time that I spent in Erasmus, was the time that I spent in Poland. And imagine, for the first time, I'm a bit more free. For the first time, I'm not constantly being diminished, criticized, made me feel guilty for existing. For the first time, I have a breather. And I felt, oh my God, so free. I felt the happiest I ever felt. Like I was in cloud nine. And also, I feel like if you have an experience like that, people are very accepting. Like all the students were very like this open mindedness, spirits, like free spirits. This mentality that I loved, where I was free for the first time. But again, I'm free, but I'm still gardening. I'm still drinking a lot of alcohol. And also like in the university I start using, also this is also very dark part that traumatized me a lot, but at the time it was what I was doing to survive. I was using also intimate relationships to escape. And again, I'm saying these words because of YouTube guidelines. um so I was having like, it was also very a promiscuous time of my life. Again, not judging, go queens, go kings, do whatever you feel comfortable with. But for me at the time, I was not doing it for healthy reasons. I was doing it because I needed everything to escape. I was looking for everything and anything to escape. So like I was very always intoxicated, always jumping from one person to the next. This very wild, crazy time, right? And imagine Erasmus starts coming to an end, the semester starts coming to an end. And I remember my colleagues that had come with me from Portugal, they were like excited to be home. And I was devastated. I was like, I cannot go home. I cannot, I don't know what I'm going to do that next, but I cannot go home. And this friend of mine at the time, she tells me, hey, like this, there is a, like another city in Portugal that is really cool to live with and it's kind of cheap. Maybe you could go there. I never been to that city. I never visited. I knew nobody. But I was so desperate that I was like, yes. She told me like a random city in Portugal, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go. No thinking, I made up my mind in that instant because I was desperate. I was like, anything is better than what I call home. Anything. So basically, in that summer, I decide to like have a summer job. That summer job, again, a whole podcast in of itself, a whole episode in of itself. It was crazy, but also like it was crazy, traumatic, but at the same time, like a time that I look with a lot of fondness too. So basically, I worked like this waitressing job in this fast food chain. Horrible job, barely paid, overworked, no conditions, of course. But my plan was okay, I'm going to work this job, I'm going to save money, and I'm going to move. I'm going to go to a different city. And I found like a friend of a friend that has a room. I don't know, like, I barely know these people. I'm desperate. I'm like, I'm going to go. I don't care. I'm going to go alone. I'm going to pack my suitcase, work, have a little money, and go there and find a job. That was my plan. So that's what I did. And I remember that I only told my parents when I was going because I knew they were not going to support me. Like I knew there was no point in telling them because not only were they not going to support me, I also had some fear that they might create more obstacles for me to go there. So basically, I kept quiet, I worked. And when that summer was finished, I was like, parents, I'm going to move cities. And imagine, I always felt like such a menace in their life. I always felt such a burden. And again, in my mind, the way that I'm rationalizing this is I'm leaving my house for the sake of my parents because I'm such a horrible person. I'm such a burden. Like I'm such a hurricane of a person. The only thing I create is chaos and pain. And I'm doing this also kind of for them in my mind, the way that I'm rationalizing at the time. I'm doing this for them to finally live the life that they want to live, for them to finally have some free time and less weight in their life. I'm not expecting them to support me, but also not expecting for them to be that upset for, for me leaving. So when I say to them that I'm leaving, they like really get really upset. And I'm kind of shocked and confused because in my mind, I was like, but I always been such a burden. I think there will be a part of you that will like that I'm going. So they are upset. They are like, no, you can't go. It's going to be super hard, super difficult. You can't do this to us. You're a bad daughter. You're leaving us. I don't care. I go anyway. I pack my bags, what I can fit in a suitcase. I go, I take the train. Again, I never been to this city. I know nothing. I have an address of a room that I'm supposedly going to rent. And it's just me with a suitcase and a train ticket. So I take my train. Like my parents don't even drop me off at train station. Like I take the bus, I take the train, I do it in silence, I do it with them, without them, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. And I reach this new city, and I'm so lost because I've never been there. And I'm like, okay, I'm supposedly need to take a bus to the place that's the address that I'm going to live. And imagine, this is like the funny thing I think about the universe. And like, I think I was never supported physically, but like in the midst of chaos, I had always some like random person, random occasion, random event that always helped me. So like this girl like sees me kind of like flustered because I have the bags, like I look lost, I don't know where I am. I'm just trying to find the bus, and like this girl is actually going to the place where I'm going to live, and she's like, "Let me help you." And this girl, like, I only see that once, never met her. Like, she just appeared and helped me, and like she drops me at the place that I'm going to live, which I'm super grateful for. So I'm in this new city, looking for jobs. I find a job. It's a job in the call center. The job itself, mentally devastating, mentally terrible, but it kind of pays well. So I'm able to live financially independent. The I think YouTube also has issues with that. The endemic lockdown comes, so I can work from home, which I'm very grateful. And when lockdown comes, my father, can I say this, passes away, is not alive anymore. And again, I'm still unable to sit with my mind. I'm still like doing the same things I always did, drinking, gardening, making all these like quote unquote friendships that most of them are not. Some of them are. There are a lot of people that I have fond memories of and still are in my heart until this day from that city. But he passes away, and it was my first time dealing with something like that, that close to me. So because I'm unable to process any emotion, I just start using more and more substances. At this point, not only I'm not able to spend one day sober, I'm not able to spend 1 minute sober. I'll wake up, the first thing was to garden. 2 gardens immediately. No breakfast, nothing. Wake up, gardening. And I needed to be numb from day to night. This escalates from gardening to snowing. Again, I'm using friendly, hopefully friendly YouTube guidelines while saying this. So my alcohol and my substance use only gets worse, and it only increases. Again, it's also lockdown. The world is like, it's all chaos. Everything is bad, right? And in lockdown was very hard, but I had some moments there that I was alone. And in those moments that I was alone, again, very hard, very difficult, even though that was alone, numb, like faded, I had for the first time in a long time, some time alone with my thoughts. And I start to kind of process, but not process at all. Because imagine, I'm still in contact with my mother, and basically she'll call me, text me, and the way that she would communicate with me was like guilt tripping me for not being with her. in that moment, like saying to me that she was going to not continue to be alive because she was alone and my father had passed away and I was like a bad daughter for not being there. Did all this conversation, right? So I still felt that even though I was in a different city, I needed more distance. I needed more separation. And I knew I had to get out of Portugal. And when I started being alone, I was like, okay, I need to get out of this country. Like another city is not distant enough. Because my mother was also starting to make plans to like sell our home and like buy one in the city now that I was leaving. And I was like, no, I can't. Like I went here to escape. Like I'm not going back. So I decided to apply to a master's in another country. And I tried to find a country that was literally like still in Europe because I'm European. So like it's easier to move, right? It's a easier transition because again, I'm doing all of this alone. I have no support. I have nothing. I just have me, myself, and I, and my desperation. Um, so I choose this country and I choose according to like living standards and safety because I wanted, like to have like some sort of a decent life, some sort of like safety, feel some sort of safety, right? But also because it was far away from Portugal. So I applied to this masters in this different country. I get accepted and I go. At this point in my journey, I know I have issues. I am aware that I'm going to a path of no return. I am aware that I'm not aware of what I've been through, but I'm aware that the way that I'm living my life so recklessly with so much, substance use, alcohol use, I need to start healing. I need to face this. I don't know what I was going to face, but I knew I needed to sit with myself. So when I move countries, I move with the intention of you're going to face it, Laurinda. You're going to sit with your emotions and you're going to try to the best of your capability to not escape from them. So I move countries and I start sitting with my emotions and it hits me like a ton of bricks. It's like for the first time, I'm sitting with how I feel for the first time in a long time. I don't remember, honestly, before that. The last time I heard my mind, I don't. The first times that I am sober, I don't remember. So when I start doing it, everything comes and everything comes at once. Like I start sitting with like these heavy emotions of so much pain, so much despair, so much guilt, and I'm exhausted. I'm burned out. No energy. I can barely go to classes. I go to classes and I finished the master's, by the way, with again medium average grades and impressive because I was no energy. The best way that I can describe this is no energy. My body was physically in pain. I would spend days on end on my bed just crying, crying, crying. I'll not move, and my body was in pain, right? The only safe place that I had, and the only place where I could really sit with my feelings was nature. It was like this forest. And until this day, as you can see if you are watching this on YouTube, my safe place is like nature like something that has a bit of green or nature, and also a place where I don't see people, that I don't interact with people. So there was this forest in the city that I was taking my master's, this forest for me, my best friend. The love I have for this forest is more than the love I ever had for a person. I'll like drag my body to the forest. Like I would walk in pain. My body was aching. And again, I'm not doing any exercise. I'm not doing anything. I am just laying in bed and my body is heavy in so much pain. And I go to the forest to cry. I cry every day. I reach a point of this state where I I'm just completely burned out and depressed, and I don't even have the energy to make food. I don't have the energy to eat. I don't have the energy to bathe. I don't have the energy to clean. I have nothing. I just wake up, cry, cry, cry. And that's all I did for a couple of months there. And I started freaking out at this point. Like, I'm like, will I ever have energy again? Like, in this moment, I'm like, will I ever be quote unquote normal again? Because I get, again, this is the first time that I'm alone, really truly alone in the sense, no people. Yes, I spoke with some people, but I was not spending daily time with them. It was not like every day I was with someone. I was also like not completely sober, but there were some moments there that I was sober. So those moments I was alone, those moments that I was sober, I was sitting with all my feelings, my deepest, darkest thoughts, and I was just crying. At this point, being alone is hard for me, but I'm doing it because I know that I need to do it. I don't understand the reasoning, but I knew that I could not escape anymore because escapisms were leading me to a path that I felt of no return. So I'm sitting with my emotions. And like 2 years pass of being in this state of like completely exhaustion and completely burnout. And I start to get better slowly. I start to regain more energy. Like I start to, yeah, slowly regaining energy to do like daily things. Very grateful that I finished my master's. Don't know how I did it because I was a mess. I was a wreck. My mind was full of heaviness. It was full of like the deepest, darkest thoughts. It was full of confusion. I could barely read stuff. Like I would read the research papers. I'll be like, my mind is going all places, but not this. So I started slowly getting better. And again, I'm still like making some friendships here and there. So I still have kind of people that sometimes I hang out with, but I'm slowly starting to get more comfortable with myself and more comfortable with being alone. I start slowly to be comfortable in my emotions. I start slowly to feel comfortable in my deepest, darkest thoughts. And I reach a point that I realize that I'm really happy alone, which is crazy to think about because for so long I wanted to escape and for so long I could not be alone. But I reached a point I was like, damn, I love to be alone. And I think for a long time I felt this sense of loneliness. And how I see loneliness now is that I felt loneliness when I would feel like these strong emotions. And I just at the time just wanted someone to be there for me. I just wanted someone to support me during that time. And that's when I felt the most lonely. And then I started to be there for myself, like I wanted people to be there for me. I started doing what I wanted for people, doing it to myself. And that's when I start really enjoying being alone. Now, for the past year, I don't have a group of friends. I have no contact with my family. Of course, my mother still texts me and I try to ignore it for the most part. I've been almost not in social isolation because I have roommates, I have other people that I've interacted to, but I have no friends, no contact with my family, and I kind of like it. And like in some weird way, I feel kind of guilty for liking it because I've worked hard to reach this point and I wanted to reach this point. This was a conscious effort to be with myself, to learn how to be with myself sober. Yes, I also been sober for months now. I mean, I'm not trying to actively be sober. Like it's not an effort that I'm putting like I cannot garden, I cannot drink. It's not that, but I simply don't want it anymore because I'm enjoying my own presence for the first time in so long, and I worked so hard to be here and it was so difficult. So basically, like for the past year, no friends, no family, and I like it. And I think sometimes I feel a bit guilty because I think there is like this pressure like, you should have friends, you should have a group of people of support. And I'm not denying it. I think, yes, that's important. However, for me, like now moving forward, if I am with a friend or if I create a connection with someone, I want it to be because it is really healthy, because I am choosing to be with that person and not as a way to escape. If I'm going to have a dynamic with someone moving forward, it will be because they are healthy for me, because we are healthy for each other, because they accept me unconditionally, because they love me unconditionally. Like, I'm not going to settle for less than that just to pass the time because I am fine and very fulfilled in being alone. And also, imagine, I understand why there is like this conversation of being alone is like bad for your mental health. I understand what does it mean, because I think like when you are alone, you are really confronted with your emotions and your thought processes, and you really sit with your deepest, darkest thoughts. But I am kind of enjoying it, sitting with it, because now I can sit with my emotions and with my thoughts with so much love. I kind of like being alone in the sense that allows me to feel it all. It allows me to sit with my feelings, no form of escapism, no running away, just me, myself, and my emotions. And again, in the future, yes, probably I'm going to start building relationships and probably I'm going to start building friendships. But right now, because for so long, I was not with myself, I'm really enjoying being with myself. And this all ties to kind of having the courage to finally be authentic and speaking my truth the way that I feel it, exactly for how I see it. Again, my truth is not other people's truth. There are three sides to a story: me, theirs, and the reality. but to start expressing myself exactly how I feel, because at this point, I have nobody to impress. I have nothing that I need to fit into. I'm not looking for any sort of acceptance from the outside. I'm not looking for any sort of love from the outside because right now I'm giving it to myself. And I really think life is about balance. And I think right now this is like a period of my life that I'm balancing all of those years that I escaped, all of those years that I was woohoo, party girl, da bunch of people, bunch of this and that. And I think right now being alone for me is kind of bringing a balance to all of those years, but it's also to learn how to fully accept myself and love myself, even the things that I don't like about myself, especially the things that I don't like about myself. Because at the end of the day, yes, I'm here sitting, and a lot of part of this story, I'm shameful of it. I'm humiliated. I'm not proud of it by any means or sorts. But at this point in my life, I'm not afraid to share it because I'm not looking to be accepted. I'm not looking to be loved. All that I'm looking for right now is creating, slowly building a life that is authentic to me. Not perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. Nothing is ever completely easy, but authentic to who I am. So that's the reason why I wanted to start this new season of Magical Conversations with Laurinda. And I wanted to start this season of sharing my story. My story is not ever to blame anyone. I only, honestly, I just wish all the best for the people, my family, my parents, my mother. Wish them all the best, just far away from me. I wish you any harm. I'm not blaming anyone for anything. Am I angry sometimes? Yes. Do I feel it was unfair? Very. Am I looking for some sort of, I don't know, revenge, some sort of like that? No. All that I'm looking for right now is a sense of peace, a sense of safety. All that I'm looking right now is a place where I feel safer to be myself and safer to be authentic. So that's the reason why I wanted to start this season 2 of Magical Conversations with Laurinda, sharing my story for how I feel it was, sharing my point of view, sharing what I've been through and what led me here. And it's really funny because I think at the beginning of this podcast, I was really nervous and now I'm like super confident. I'm like super flowing. But at the beginning, I was like, oh my God, I'm about to say this. And in some weird way, I think this being in the internet makes me feel safer than being like with people. I don't think I could do this with someone physically in front of me. Hopefully, I'm going to reach a point I'll be able to, slowly by slowly building the bricks of being comfortable with myself, even the parts that I'm not proud of, especially the parts that I don't like and I'm not proud of. But somehow, because I think it's behind the screen, it doesn't, I feel safer because of it. Even though that people always have opinions, and that's fine. I'm totally okay with any opinion. Because at this point, again, I'm not looking to be accepted. I'm not looking to be loved. I am giving myself that self acceptance and that self love. I'm not looking for external validation anymore. All that I'm looking for is to live a life that is more authentic to me, a life where I can be more myself, where I can create the space to be myself, And I'm really grateful. I always like to end the conversations with myself because I feel that's what this is, like a conversation with you, but also like is the way I speak to myself as well. I always like to end my conversations with gratitude. I'm very grateful to be okay in being alone. I'm very grateful that I don't feel lonely anymore. And I'm very grateful that I can be the person I always wanted. I'm very grateful for the safety. Oh my God, I'm very grateful for the safety that I have. I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful that I had the courage to leave my childhood home. I'm grateful I had the courage. I don't look at it as courage. I look honestly more as desperation, but I guess you can also look at it as courage. I'm grateful that I left. I'm grateful that I'm far away from it. And I'm grateful that I am alone. Again, I know this is not forever, but for right now, I'm living my best life. And also, I'm grateful for this podcast, all the people that are listening or watching, all the people that subscribe to me on YouTube, all the people that follow me on Instagram and interact with me. I'm beyond grateful that you are here because I feel like you are getting to know a version of myself that I never showed anybody. And it's so impactful for me to see that you also resonate with a part of my story, because that makes me feel like less crazy almost. Because for so long I thought like I was the crazy one, right? I thought like it was me and I'm crazy and I'm like inherently broken, and there's a reason why I'm feeling all of this. But to realize that we all go through very similar experiences, right? And I'm very grateful for the people that resonate with this. And even if the people that don't, I'm grateful for everyone. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day or night whenever you're listening. Bye.